Hey everyone, Rob from Southgate Media Group here. Before we get started with this podcast, we have a quick message. If this is your first time checking out the show, we love that you found us and we really hope you enjoy it. What we have to say is for the subscribers. If you enjoy our shows, would you please donate to help keep these going? We don't want to have to put traditional ads on these shows, but this does cost money. So we really do rely heavily on donations. To make a donation to the show, please go to our website, www.southgatemediagroup.com. Go to the page for the show, and in the upper right-hand corner is a donate button. It takes you right to PayPal, and you can donate whatever amount you want. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. And now on with the show.
Welcome to 221B Baker Street, by way of the Southgate Bridge. I am Sherlock Holmes. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson. Actually, I am your host, Zachary Hare, and while she is not Watson, she is the Watson to my Holmes, Kristen Deere.
Hello.
Hello. How may I direct your call? Welcome to the Southgate switchboard.
It's my thing. It's my thing.
Are you trying to get a hold of Klondike 5? Let me just connect you, sir.
I do a strange hello. That's my thing.
And my thing is when you do the strange hello, I completely call you on it.
And you freak out.
I'm not freaking out. No, you want to see freaking out? No, you want to hear. You want to hear freaking out? Listen to the Flash Hour of Horror. I go nuts on my co-host Phil every chance I get.
Laugh. You please laugh every time.
Well,
there, like that.
I
like
what
I
laugh?
Just did.
Wait, I what laugh?
Wheeze laugh. You wheeze when you like that. See?
What?
When you wheeze laugh, you're like laughing so hard. You wheeze. Everybody.
Kristen's gonna go take a little nap right now, folks, and I'm gonna take over the rest of the show because I don't know what the heck she's talking about.
Okay. Never mind.
Okay, so we're talking about the season 3 episode, The Female of the Species, and I enjoyed this episode immensely. So we start right off with, well, I mean, not that surprising. We start with
the far off look, right?
Of course.
You know that Andrew's dead by looking at Joan. And you know it's been at least a few days. You know all that just from looking at her. It's all in her eyes.
Yeah. It didn't even hit me when I first watched the episode that she had drank hers first. It didn't hit me the first time I watched it. I thought, because I didn't see that he had taken a sip of his.
Oh, right.
That's just the first time. But so he, although obviously it's TV, so I just don't see how she could have dropped something into the coffee when she bumped into her, but whatever.
I know, she was looking at it. I was thinking that the same thing. And then, but she was somebody.
But whatever. But apparently, like, we thought that'd be part of the case, but no, apparently they caught her off camera.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's the cartel leader, which didn't really surprise any of us. It's not,
but also, I wonder how they found her. I guess that's why they did it off camera, because how would they find this lady just based on, a blue jacket, and, I mean, they didn't know anything.
Right. And they catch her. She's a known assassin, and she's actually on pay. Well, she's the cartel's front company helped bring her here, but obviously she says, "I acted on my own." Blah 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 blah. And then the cartel is played by Gina Gershon just drives the knife in. Hey, I heard you were breaking up with him that day.
She is beyond evil.
Well, you don't get the cartel as a woman and not be a little ruthless.
Yeah, and the fact that just knowing Joan was enough, that she doesn't, she doesn't care about anybody, but Joan knowing that just having a friend is enough to get them killed because of this Alana March, it's like she's trapped forever. So it seems hopeless, which means that's got to be Alana's death wish, right? Her death warrant right there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the interesting is, when I heard that, I thought we were going to get something like she was going to be the villain for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I thought it was going to last longer. I didn't know they were going to solve it right away,
Yeah, and I can't wait we'll talk about that when we get to it, because that was freaking awesome. So, Holmes, we get a nice little view. I tweeted this because it's definitely worth mentioning, and it made notes that Holmes is very caring towards
Yes.
Watson in this
He's
time.
so doting and worried, but it's like he was with Kitty, you know?
Well, I think that's part of it. And see, it's Holmes, of course, is still Holmes, so but he obviously he's not going to just be like, oh well, someone died, it's time to move on. No, he's not. And that's how the BBC Sherlock would be. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of that show anymore. But it's like, just because you're smart doesn't mean you don't understand emotions,
Right.
you know. But he locked himself away from the world. But now he's had people, and especially being a Kitty, I think like Watson and Kitty together is what it's transformed them, and they show that in the show.
Yeah. But also, I mean, he had this whole thing with Kitty, and after she left, now it's like he has that again now that Watson is
Right.
Yeah.
But we also see in the next scene that Holmes can still be petty. What the heck was he like? You never published it. No, the first time I watched, I didn't understand what the heck they were talking about.
Well, I love that Sherlock hates him over bees.
Well, it made more sense when I watched it the second time. It made a lot more like, it's Sherlock
colony collapse
bees.
disorder.
Well, I've heard of that, of course, but I've heard of it, of course, but my brain just didn't. And of course, his name is BB. See, when you watch it with captions, it literally says B. I'm like, oh, okay, we're talking about bees.
I love the whole bee loving angle. That I think that's awesome.
You know, I'm gonna try to tweet the writers or something. Maybe I'll tweet when there's just shows on. Maybe they'll see. I want to find out where they came up with the idea to make Sherlock a bee apiarist, as it's called.
Well, I think it actually makes sense for someone who's really logical. The bees are something to be concerned about. You know, I think it is.
No,
like
they are. They
really
completely are.
Deal, so.
Hey, maybe that's the whole reason they do it. They want to create awareness, which I'm fine with.
I was thinking that the first time that came up, I was thinking that it might be, just creating awareness. I think that's probably it.
I'm going to try to see if I can find out why. I'm going to try to see what I can, because the writers do respond to Twitter sometimes, so it's just making sure they see yours, you know. Although, it's funny, they respond to my tweets, but the second I put, want to come on the podcast, they fall strangely silent. But we'll see. So, we see that Holmes has actually has called in Detective Bell.
Yay!
And we also see that Bell has apparently found Clyde's family.
I love his off-duty, kind of laid-back attitude and clothing.
Well, I like how he's like, how did you know I wouldn't have something to do? It's like, people who have to be forced to take a day off don't have stuff to do. But I think people, now the whole episode's like that, but this scene in particular, you've got to really watch the back and forth with these two.
I love it.
It's so quick and believable. These are two guys, and it's probably because they're actors, of course, but they have known each other for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So it shows in there, like, they're comfortable with each other. To be that quick, you have to trust each other. You have to know the other actor is going to carry the torch.
Right.
And that, in my opinion, that shows, and that really what's make it's funny that, I mean, we've had episodes where they helped each other before, but this is the first, I'm pretty sure, almost all episode that it was just Holmes and Bell.
This is the first one, and I'm really glad to see it.
In the first season, maybe even the second, this wouldn't have worked as an episode. You know, like those two together. Yeah. It wouldn't have worked like this, at the very least. And I like how he gives it to charity, and like he's asked him to give it all these little lines that they have together. It's just
perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh god.
I love the way, of course, the way Sherlock says zebras.
Oh, how about quaha?
Yeah, quaha.
God, I think Johnny Lee hated saying that word, because he's like, every actor has a certain word. Like, it's actually, do a Sherlock reference. Have you ever heard the story about Benedict Cumberbatch and the word penguins?
No.
He did a nature documentary once, and everyone who's listening, they talk about it in the Graham Norton show. Type in Graham Norton, Benedict Cumberbatch, penguins, you'll find it.
I've seen it.
And well, they talk about it. Apparently he did a nature documentary, and he first time he said the word, it was fine, but then he said it like penguin, and that was made, and it made it to the final cut.
Penguin?
Penguin, like he said it wrong, and even he's like, it's not like I'm alone in the room that no one said anything. I think the nature people were afraid to say the Benedict. Dude, you didn't say penguin, you said penguin. And what's really funny is he was in Penguins of Madagascar, and he says it wrong in the. Oh, it's really funny. Okay, but whatever. Okay. And I think one thing that's significant to mention in this episode is Holmes, and of course Holmes and Bell do jabs at each other, but Holmes never once puts down Bell.
No.
They do jabs because they're like a friend would do, but he never like calls him dumb. Never like he might correct him, but he never. And that's why I like this version of Holmes so much.
And they've always been this way. They've always exchanged jabs, but they respect each other.
I mean, in the beginning he did, I think, maybe a little bit, but it wasn't very long. Like once he got to know him, but that is the number one thing I like about this show. The cops aren't stupid. Right. I've always hated that with Holmes adaptations, where yes, Holmes of course figures out the cases that are unusual, but I know corruption and favoritism does exist, but you don't become captain without being at least a slightly good police officer, you know? And
it's realistic, you know, the stuff that Bell gets wrong is realistic, you know. I mean, you hear him list off what he's got. So, well, we'll get to that, but you know, when you list off what he's got so far,
yeah, it's what I've said this about the show before during some episodes where I didn't find particularly challenging. I consider myself intelligent, and I love detective shows. So, like the way Bell says, that's probably how I would do the case. I don't want someone like me on the show. I want someone smarter than me who could do really unusual stuff. You know. Okay.
Oh, and I like the change of pace. We have this really intense, emotional, personal case of murder. You know, Andrew.
Yes.
But now we have zebras. Stolen zebras.
Yeah, two pregnant zebras. So they talk. Apparently, it was snowing in New York when they were filming this.
They look freezing.
Which is interesting timing because anyone who's in the Northeast right now,
yes,
can feel their believe me, because I'm in the Northeast and I hate anyone starts singing Frozen gets punched in the face.
I don't know how Bell kept a straight face when Sherlock keeps saying zebras. He's like looking at him kind of funny, but he always keeps a straight face.
Zebra. But yes, so they're talking about the truck. Like apparently the clues lead to deduction, and there was good deduction in this episode. And the paint is a conspiracy distinct, like it's a proprietary, so only that company can have it. And what a weird name for a delivery company.
Yeah, Axiom Parcel Delivery.
If this was one of my comic book shows, I would think that was a reference to something. So they start looking into that. Now, like you said, while they're looking at that, we get the B story, which is Watson dealing with Andrew's death. Now we get a very interesting scene with Andrew's father.
Yes.
I thought he does not. It's fascinating because he doesn't. Because this is so non-cliche. I loved it. He does not blame her really for
Andrew's. He
doesn't
blame her, but he blames her.
Right. He says, you had a cartel leader. Why didn't you have protection?
Right.
And she could have said back to him, why didn't your son know which coffee to drink from? We all make mistakes.
I don't hold you responsible, but I hold you responsible.
I hold you responsible. Yeah. It was and I found it very interesting.
It was perfect. I mean, they just they do the characters perfectly on this show. Almost every time. There have been a few duds, but not many.
Oh, I can't name too many characters that fail.
Yeah, I mean, even the little bit part characters.
Oh, that's what makes a good genre show, is the characters that are just, you're never going to see them again, but you love them. And this show does that quite good. And this being Holmes, I mean, it's a good chance when we do that if we get that with the irregulars, you know, they use that every so often too. And so they find out
Oh, and then there's
the
that
name.
whole scene. I mean, Sherlock doesn't usually like tedium, but the whole thing with the weighing object,
Yes, that's what I was just about to talk about.
and
Yes.
I mean, I don't. That doesn't. It actually seems highly improbable to me that he could figure out all the combinations of parcels. You know,
Can I just? I don't know if this is a testament to Johnny's flexibility, but who the heck can sit Indian style in a suit?
oh,
Like,
I've seen it.
I know, but that's not a suit. That's not comfortable. I mean, a suit is meant to certain way, not like that. And then he just and I don't know why, but the way he's realizes he has a lead. Look at the way he stands up. If you ever watched it, it's really like, well, he always gets up interesting, but especially here, it's just like he just leaps up.
He's always so stiff or something. I don't know what it is. The way he moves, it's funny.
Well, if you look at classic Holmes, he'll jump up like that too. I still remember one Jeremy Brett, one of my favorite my favorite Holmes, but he did the Red Head League, and Watson walks in. And the scene in the book is Watson walks in and says, "Oh, you're busy," and Holmes stops him. In the Jeremy Brett version, he literally yells, "No, Watson, wait!" and he leaps over a chair to get Watson, and it's hilarious, and it just makes me think of that.
Yep, he's funny that way.
Yes, he is. So we see here, yeah, like you said, they're doing the weights, and then we get the. Is this the scene with the Indian food?
With the Indian food.
I think that might be later.
Yeah, it's right. It's right after. It's
No, it is this. It is here because I'm watching it as we do it, and I love. He's like, "Why is your picture at the Indian restaurant?" Because I helped them figure out something about the caste
Oh,
system.
okay.
Yeah, and then he's like, "How much chili pepper is in here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing about Belle is they're like, "What a couch! Try a bite, you might."
Well, right before that though, isn't it right before that we find out that there was a collar with GPS?
Yes.
So
of
the
course.
collar with GPS,
Yes.
and then the food. And I think it's funny that Belle is upset that he didn't get him lunch, but meanwhile Sherlock is buying all the food for Watson.
He's buying it and making it.
Taking really good care of her.
Okay, so they using that, they actually find where the thief dumped the packages, and they find a clue, which is a receipt, and they use it to deduce where the next location.
This is another thing that I thought was a little bit off. That there were two things, and this is the other. One was the weighing of the packages, and somehow I didn't get how that would.
Yeah, I was a little about that too.
And then the receipt. I mean, why wouldn't they? What was I going to say? Knowing what happened, okay, why was the receipt there? Why wouldn't they dump all the packages on the way to get the zebras instead of after stealing the zebras and taking them? Like, what order did they do these things in? Like, why is the receipt there? Anyway, that's another small thing, but we can let it go.
Well, I think that's or why there would be a receipt is an interesting question. Because obviously it's from the stuff they used to induce labor, but it's like he went and. Wait, I just realized something. No, because we can do a spoiler here. We know who the guy was. He was a vet essentially. He couldn't have gotten that stuff himself.
Wait, but the vet wasn't the one driving the truck.
No, but wait, the guy knew about. I'm talking about the guy who did the crime. He was an animal caretaker, wasn't he?
He was a caretaker. He wasn't a veterinarian though, but he knew bio. He was into biotech. He was getting a zoology something or other. He worked at the zoo, but
I'm trying to think about
guy that he killed, or
I'm just trying to think why there'd be a receipt.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
they were trying to say that the guy saw the receipt, and so he said, "Oh, I'll go here." Maybe that was it, but they didn't explain that.
No, they didn't explain the receipt. Now, another thing, I don't know what the other thing that bothered you was, but the other thing that bothers me, well, it was just the receipt and the weighing. That's the two things.
Yeah. can't remember if I wrote anything else. That's the two things I.
Well, I think we can add a third thing to that. And apparently at this equine hospital, no one notices a random delivery truck coming in and being left there, by the way, and 2 zebras being unloaded.
Yeah, it's like right. It's right. Well, it's kind of off to the side though. It's not right in front. I mean, was it off like in an alley on to this like?
Well, it was in a garage. Of course, it wasn't.
But it wasn't. It
Okay,
wasn't
yeah.
like.
Oh, yeah. Maybe it was just near
Yeah,
the
it wasn't
hospital.
it near the. It wasn't like at the hospital.
Although they do make a reference to that old saying, you hear hoofs, and you think horses, not zebras. Belle makes a little reference to that saying. I'm guessing it was a reference to that saying. When he said she would go in and listen for hoof
Okay,
beats.
yeah.
But still, zebras make a very distinctive. Now, you think one person would go, "Did I just hear a zebra?"
That's true. I mean, it wasn't that far away, you know. You could see the hospital from where the truck was sitting. So.
Right. I like how Belle's like, "Hey, look, truck."
Yeah.
Okay, so they go. Obviously, they find the zebras, but they noticed there's only 2. The other ones aren't there, and the crime.
Well, the labor's been induced.
Was all about.
They're not pregnant anymore.
Right, and the crime has to have been about the babies, which doesn't really make any sense because you could make money off the zebras too. So they start investigating the scene. That's when they find the body of our first victim of the shoe.
Yes, and that's where it gets a little bit darker. But we've gone through all the silliness, so we're enough removed from the seriousness at the beginning.
And of course, and it's like we said before, Belle looks at the evidence and figures, okay, he must have been an accomplice, and they argued.
It wasn't really arguing. Kind of thing. It was more like Belle gives his list of the,
right.
what he's got,
yes.
And then Sherlock says it's wrong and gives the actual list of what really happened.
Well, to be specific, Holmes says it's wrong. And he says it's a broken axle, so it's probably from this. And he's right. The zebras would be agitated, and also the text from the victim's phone suggests that he wasn't intending to be there.
Yeah.
And also he's like, "CSU comb that truck. They missed that receipt? They failed to examine the zebra dropping." Yeah, I have to expected Belle to react like, "I'm holding this."
Well, I love his face when he realizes that he's holding a clue from poop.
I would have liked a better reaction, but I didn't. Well, but whatever. Yeah.
The look on his face, it's priceless.
So they find a receipt to the feed store again in zebra poop. So Holmes, like I said, like Belle gives his list of events, like you said, and Holmes gives his. He's not insulting Belle. It's just saying, no, this is how it happened.
Right.
If you look at if this has been a bad Holmes adaptation, he would have said, "No, you idiot."
Yeah. But he treats him almost more like an apprentice in a way. An unwitting apprentice.
Well, there's something along those lines. Well, it's actually connected to my favorite lines. We'll get to in a minute. So they start looking into the feeds. As they're trying to look in that area for. Well, first he goes and checks on Watson, and it turns out the cartel leader is threatening her.
Yeah.
And then we get. I love some of the lines because he doesn't pick. He's like, I like how Holmes actually says, "I had a couple minutes of patience left in me,"
yes.
Or waiting. But he did pick her mailbox lock.
But the look on his face here when she's watching TV.
Yeah. We'll get to that. But one thing I find interesting, Holmes wouldn't at least do a speed read of Watson's mail, and he wouldn't have noticed the letter from the prison.
Yeah.
But that's a small thing. So, yes. But what I liked about this is when they're watching TV, and I even tweeted, "This is how I feel watching sports." Me
too. I hate sports.
And I love where she's like, "This is like a mother and a little kid."
It is.
She's like, "You can go play now." He's like,
"Yay!" He's hating it. I mean, the look of utter disgust at what she's watching, whatever it is. I'm curious what it was. I mean, even the writers probably don't know what it was, but I'd be curious of what they would come up with what she was watching, and how he's sitting there and basically pouting until she gives him permission to have his way.
Yeah, she looks at him and just says, "You can go work."
Like, oh, goody! Yay! He hops up again.
And then we get something which I think is exceedingly good. Watson gets to do a rude awakening.
Oh, yes, I love that part.
That was probably the first time she smiled since Andrew's death.
Yes, it was great.
I love how she's like, that felt so good.
It was so good. And, but before that, though, before the rude awakening, I like how Joan finally explains why she had pulled away before.
Yes.
And, she wanted something normal and something that was hers instead of his. And his words say that it's okay, but his face seems to say, you have no idea the hell you put me through. I almost fell off the wagon because of you, and, because you rejected my world. And, all he had to do was kind of allow her to come to the conclusion on her own, But his face seems to kind of show sympathy that she had to learn the hard way, once she mentions Andrew.
And it's an interesting way they handled Watson having a serious relationship. Like, because obviously we've said many times in the books, it's basically like Watson gets married and then off story, the wife dies. So it's an interesting way they handled that. I mean, I'm curious to see what they're, because I'm thinking with all their mentioning of it, they're gonna go somewhere with this.
I think she just needs she just needs to take full ownership of her place at the brownstone, so they can kind of take turn. It's like now she does the rude awakening. If she moves back in and takes full ownership of her position as a detective and as her with her place at the brownstone, then maybe they can take turns. It's not always him waking her, and it's
that
not
would be
all
interesting.
Of his. It's not all his world; it's hers too. She just needs to take
Well, it's like
ownership
he
of it.
says. Well, they say that here. It's not my world or yours. It's
Right.
our world. He says
our
that.
world.
And it's interesting because it's said many times that this season was about Watson. Now, we forgot that was the Kitty storyline, but if you look at it, it still could, because she helped mentor Kitty, which helped her grow. And we should probably mention that this episode was directed by Lucy Liu.
Oh, yeah. And it was a great job. But that's probably why she wasn't in it so much, even though I thought it was interesting how it was so much about her, even though she wasn't in it that much. There was a lot of
She does a
growth, and
really
there was
good
a lot
job.
about her, but she wasn't actually in it.
And we get and the short scene she has, she gives. Now this is better. Like, it's not saying Holmes. This is what made the show work with them. She figures out something. It's not something Holmes wouldn't have noticed. It's something she would know, being a medical
Right.
professional. This is one of the things I always love about the show, and they kind of lost it for a little while. They kept making Watson figure out things that Holmes clearly could have figured out.
Yeah, that was annoying. And even Kitty, they did that with Kitty too, a couple of times.
And I looked it up. The place is actually the place where they had the first polio vaccine.
Yeah, you know what? I read about that a while ago. It's not something I remembered. It's one of those things you forget.
And then they get to the place and they find I thought it looked a little off, but I figured that's just what a baby zebra looks like.
Yeah, same here. I didn't know right away either.
Now I'm curious. Did you think for a second the thing was real?
Yeah, I did.
Me too, for like the first second. Yeah. But then when I saw Holmes get in with it, I'm like, oh, it's animatronic. It's a pretty good animatronic. It's really good. Like the tail movement looked pretty realistic. Yeah. And even though it's animatronic, it's so cute.
It's adorable.
I'd be like on set, I'm like, Lucy, can I pet it?
Oh, you know what I just thought? I don't know if you've seen these commercials for these little fake dogs. They have little fake dogs that look real and make little noises, and they have adults on the commercial petting the dog and going, "Oh, it's the perfect dog. It doesn't make any noise. You know, buy it today, and it's for
What?
adults." And it's just so
Say
yes.
what? I have not
Oh my
seen
God,
that.
it's the most bizarre commercial I've ever seen in my life. I get so uncomfortable every time it comes on. I've only seen it a couple of times, but oh man, it's it's embarrassing.
I'm guessing it might be a regional thing because I haven't
Oh
seen
God,
that.
it's so.
Do you remember what it's for?
What it's for? The
Like, is it a company
Oh,
or?
I don't remember what the name of the company is, but it's for these, little animals that fake animals that you buy.
They're
Yeah,
adults.
they're the people in the commercial are adults. They're not kids. These little animals, these little fake animals. They're for adults, and it shows them petting
Oh.
them. That's where it gets so weird. I have to look away. It's too embarrassing. It's like watching a horror movie or something. I have to look away. It's like, oh, avert your
Okay.
eyes.
This has been delving into Kristen's psyche.
I can't take it.
So it turns now. Again, I have no idea about this bringing back extinct species. I don't know if it's true, but it's TV, so whatever. Move on. And they talk to the
You know what?
the
I've
bee
heard
guy.
about this, and I think it was. I don't remember where it was, National Geographic or something. I don't think they've actually done it yet, or maybe it was like really primitive animals, or maybe. But I don't think anyone's actually done it yet. But it is like really complex. It's a complex idea.
I would think so. Yeah, so they bring it back to the bee guy that brought Holmes in the first place, and he can't believe because it's an extinct, as Holmes would say. See, we've gone from zebra to quaha. Quaha. The way he said that, it's just quaha. But anyways, they immediately eliminate him as a suspect because he has an alibi. They said we got to figure out because they said whoever did this would require constant care throughout the entire pregnancy.
And I don't know if you noticed, but during the show, the main account for Elementary was tweeting. They tweeted a picture of the last ever quaha. Yeah.
I missed that one.
It was a good one. And then it was just from I think it was just from Wikipedia. It's on Wikipedia, the picture.
And I like how the zookeeper is like, well, if someone was able to do this miracle, why wouldn't they? Because the notoriety would be fantastic. And Holmes goes, for money. And it's true. An extinct animal, I only want to know how much that would be worth on the black market.
It makes me so sick.
I know I know it's a horrible
it's such
trade
a waste
that goes
to
on.
sell and buy anything endangered. Just what? Because they want it for themselves, and oh man, they have like things where they like eat endangered animals.
The thing I find completely depressing is that the largest population of tigers is in Texas, and they're all privately kept.
Ugh. And like there was one that's I forget where it is. Is it Texas or California or something? There's one at a gas station that's been kept in just a little cage for so long.
Oh, I haven't heard about that one.
Some animal rights people were protesting, but it must be Texas because a lot of people want it to stay there, and it just seems it's so sad. It's just a little tiny cage.
I know. Oh, that's horrible.
I mean, I get upset when I see. I hope nobody gets upset with me for this way, but I hate to see birds and reptiles in captivity. I mean, they just don't seem like they belong in captivity, I mean, I had a parrot because my grandmother had one and passed it down to us, and I always felt so sorry for him, But he lived a nice long life. They, if you care for them, but it's so sad to see any kind of animal that can fly or that runs around and takes up a lot of space. I don't know. It just seems so wrong to keep them in captivity.
I feel like I should be holding a cigar. So, Kristen, tell me about your childhood.
Okay,
so back to the show.
Sorry to be a downer.
So they go and they go. I like how he's like, it was you. This is very classic. Something Holmes would do. He's like, it was you, sir, who took the zebra. The guy's like, what? And he goes and Bell takes him aside. And he's like, I thought the guy we're looking for was tall and white. He's like, yes, he was.
I like the look on Bill's face. Like, why'd you tear into that guy?
Yeah. And I like how I don't know why this made me laugh. I like when the zookeeper guy comes over and goes, everyone's wondering what you're kind of gonna do next, so. But it's because he wanted to see the reaction of the real person. There was a guy there that was, as soon as he accused someone else, was completely relaxed. Which is an old trick, and it probably works. So they bring him back to.
Probably the only white guy to relax immensely would stick out like a sore thumb,
Right.
Or the only person to relax immensely. I mean, most of them were white, but.
So they confront him, and he, of course, denies anything, asks for a lawyer, and I thought the way they got his DNA was a little. It's like they just happened that someone at work knew exactly which can was the soda he preferred.
Yeah, that was another little bit of.
I mean, this is a nitpick, but the thing about it, I think the term is chain of evidence, and that wouldn't be admissible in a million freaking years. I mean, if they saw him throw a can, yes, and then an officer can sign off, I saw him throw away, this is his can, but some guy at his work said, yeah, this is his can.
Yeah, because, I mean, the person saying that could be the guy, They could never, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, but how about oh no, this is where the cartel leader threatens her. And how about the fact that, I mean, there's me and then there's just plain me. There's a freaking coffee cup on the other side of the postcard.
Yeah, and it looks like it was drawn. I couldn't tell if it was drawn by hand or if it was just I don't know. It looked like it's drawn by hand. Like a little piece of art,
Right. So, it turns, now apparently Reynolds has disappeared from my sight, and we get Holmes that's across the street from an old speakeasy. Now, I looked this up. That was a real place, and now it's not confirmed, but it's rumored that that's where the term 86 it came from. So that's another true little fact.
I liked that. I had never heard that before, and so that was.
I might have. It's might be one of those things that was in the vault, you know. But it's a cool little tidbit. Yep. And I think I read somewhere that Chumley's is still it's a historical landmark, or the building is at least.
Yeah. Oh, and then when he starts, it's so hilarious. He looks like he's exercising, doing stretches for Bell.
I know.
And then Bell's face, like he's fascinated and slightly disturbed by the performance. It's like and when you turn off the sound, it looks like some sort of modern song and dance routine.
You watched it without
the. Well, because when I was watching it looked like a weird modern dance, and I was like, I wonder what this would look like with the sound off, and it looked like he was sort of, doing a modern song and dance routine for Belle, and then Belle's looking at him like, kind of disturbed. What's happening?
Although, funny thing, this could be a nitpick. I really don't want to sound like I'm harping, but what's the likelihood that tunnel would still be in good condition?
I don't know.
But that's a little one, so it's not. I don't need to focus on that. Although, imagine if I might go, not really a tangent, but just comment. Like, imagine if you bought a house and you find out there's a speakeasy tunnel.
That would be awesome. That would be so cool.
Imagine being a teenager living with your parents and finding that.
I've always loved little secret entrances and fun little I don't know. I like puzzles. I love puzzles. And so that's kind of like a puzzle.
Yeah, I know. So I like how Belle thought, oh, the day's over, that Holmes not going to need me anymore. But wait, didn't this case last more than a day already by that point? So that's why it's weird when he said the work day's over. I'm like, okay. Yeah. It just threw me a bit. I don't know why he said that.
Well, I think because no, I know why he said it, because like he said, ever since they found the dead body, he was working as a cop. So his work day as a cop was over, And so it was weird to have Sherlock call him in after work. It's like, That's not how my work usually works.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
And I love that, but I love that Sherlock sort of takes ownership of Bell as a sort of apprentice, kind of like Watson, for the whole length of this case, all because it started as Sherlock's case. So even after that murder, even though Sherlock is seeing the whole thing as his, so
By the way, I love the shot of him in front of the fireplace and the way they turn the camera. Lucy did a great job.
yeah,
It just shows him, and it's like it looks like he's talking to himself, but he's actually talking to Belle. And they're trying, and he wants to, like he wants to. Holmes still wants to figure. He wants them together them to figure out because he believes through person-in-person contact they'll be able to figure out the rest of the case.
yes.
And he wants. I think he generally wants to show Belle his methods. For a second, I thought he was going to use everyone to figure out the illegal animal
Yeah.
trade. And I kind of would have liked to have seen Belle's reaction to whatever request they would
Maybe
have
in
had
the
to do.
future we'll get that. That would be interesting to see. I don't like though such a non-creative way of rude awakening Belle.
Okay, it's non-creative, but when you think about it, it's poetic. Because he woke up Detective Bell with a bell.
Yeah.
I don't care,
I know,
I liked it.
People were tweeting that. It's cute. But, I'm sure there could have been a more creative bell even, like a big bell or something. I don't know.
This is just a weird, and even in the note, he still calls him detective. He doesn't say Marcus.
Yeah.
But one thing this is just something I've noticed. Obviously, it's for comedic effect, but I have never been able to sleep with a blanket over my head. So I've always found it weird on TV when there's people sleeping somewhere and they're completely covered.
You know what? I didn't used to be able to do that, but when it gets really cold, I found that lately I've been able to do that. I don't know why, but you're not supposed to. Did you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that because it's carbon dioxide.
I mean, it's not healthy. You don't sleep as well.
So Holmes has apparently Belle doesn't eat red meat. I'm like, well, not everything in your plate's red meat. Eat some breakfast.
I thought it was interesting how Sherlock, based on that, believes that Belle has hidden depth.
Well, I just love. This is another. I mean, I think Lucy Liu's got a real butt for shooting a scene because I just love how they're eating breakfast and Holmes is just casually telling him about how he figured out the once in a blue moon code, and at one point Belle's just like, "Is that one of our unmarked vans?" That was the way he said that line was great.
I know. It was so funny how that whole thing unfolded. I mean, because the way, also the way Sherlock was drinking his tea with both hands, I love that too.
Yes.
But also, I love how, Sherlock basically arranges all of this while Belle is sleeping, and then gives him a front row seat with breakfast. So it's like a movie.
That's what it was. It was like watching a play.
And so, it's basically, and then how he sits there even after Sherlock leaves. The way Bill, sips his OJ, enjoys a few bites while watching the show.
Yep. And I like it. He goes, I could have arranged this. You were asleep.
Yeah.
Although I don't get why Holmes said the pleasure was mine and mine alone.
I know. I don't get that either. I was wondering about that.
But he does call him Marcus, so.
Well, I thought it was actually, I don't know if you caught it, but Bell called him Holmes. Doesn't he usually call him Sherlock? Because he
calls him Holmes, doesn't he?
I don't know. I don't.
But I still, this whole scene was awesome.
But I love how Bell calls him Holmes, and then Holmes calls Bell Marcus.
and we get obviously Sigurdsson. That's a old Holmes reference, and then we get my favorite, this awesome scene where we're watching reading a letter, and suddenly we hear a certain voice. I think I messaged you about this too because I'm just like, no. Why?
Yes, I could hear you here.
Let's not go that far. But I was like, oh my, like, because then she's ringing the I'm like, I wonder who that's. I thought it was gonna be from. I'm like,
Oh, sorry, I couldn't
no.
hear you. I could read you pee your pants.
Okay, can we move on from this? You're focusing too much on the urination of my pantaloons.
See,
Anyways,
you were freaking
which is
out.
when
You
what?
hate.
Fine, moving on. When she's reading the letter and suddenly we hear Natalie Dormer. Now that shows how much presence Natalie Dormer. All we need to do is her voice, and we're like, because and then when I knew what happened right the second I heard. I did not like because I could. It's completely believable that Moriarty, especially this Moriarty, would be offended by someone playing the game
Yes,
like that.
yeah. The way that whole final scene played out, that was great.
Oh, just like because like you've done so much for Holmes. That was like her way of thanking
Yeah.
Watson, which is just brilliant.
I'm actually
This-
kind of glad that we didn't have a whole season of a lot
Me
more.
too.
Yeah.
I love the idea because I've said this especially in my Sleepy Hollow show and a couple of times in my Flash Arrow podcast. One of the worst things a show can do is have an unbeatable bad guy.
Oh, it's annoying.
It's one of the reasons I stopped watching The Following. You cannot have a bad guy that's like no matter what you do can't be beaten. And now fine if they beat him, but even if it gets beaten at the end of the season, if the hero never achieves, then you know nothing's good's gonna happen.
Well, also it just
So
gets
you can-
over time. It's all
Exactly.
the same story, you know. It's hard
Exactly.
to know what to expect
But-
every time.
But I mean, it's just and then because Moriarty, even though Moriarty was taken down, but Moriarty takes down the cartel leader. It made me actually. You know what it makes me think of? Hannibal Lecter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because he killed people for
Yes.
rudeness.
That is very similar. Although he does.
That's what I just thought of. I was trying to think of what it was reminding me of, and that's
Yeah.
what it was. He would kill, and that's the same thing. She killed because she believed it was rude. Now it's funny because if the funniest part about this, if she decided to make Watson hurt, that's something she would do.
Yeah.
But not at that time, as she said, which I cannot wait to. Of course they talk, but there wasn't really a reaction. I don't know. But Holmes and she says, I want to commit myself fully to work. He's like, oh, you can come over anytime. She's like, no, I want to move back to the brownstone.
And finally committing herself. Now I'm mostly interested in seeing the episodes after this one to see what Joan is
Yes.
like when she takes ownership of her strange life.
It's gonna be. I cannot wait. It's gonna be great. So I'll do. Because I only have one this week, even though technically the pronunciation of zebra and quaha was count. My favorite lines. I just want to say real quick. I just have one, and because it was a compliment to Bell. If you look at it, he's like, we have people who can look into this, and he said, people, detective, are not you and me. And I thought he was calling Bell an
Yeah.
equal, which I thought was fantastic.
And he said similar things to Watson as well.
Yes, he
and
has.
Kitty.
And
yeah,
Kitty.
actually he said almost the same.
Yeah, I was thinking about that line when he knows something's on Kitty and Watson's mind. He's like, people would humdrum, whatever, but you are not. You are a step above. Something
you and
like
Watson are not people.
that. Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I think before we get into anything else, I think I'm gonna shove it in here. Kristen's Clue Cut.
So the crime this week was the theft of the 2 pregnant zebras and the murder of David Chang. And there weren't a lot of clues actually, but there were a lot of deductions, and it was an interesting set of events. So the first clue was the 2 sets of tire tracks leading to and from the zoo, with the tracks coming from the zoo being deeper than the set going toward the zoo, meaning that they had the zebras when they left. And the second clue was the truck that took the zebras had the proprietary purple paint. And then that leads them to Axiom Parcel Delivery, where they had reported a stolen truck. And then Sherlock somehow deduces by weighing things, he figures that the truck was carrying a GPS collar, which leads them to an alley where all of the contents of the truck were dumped. And then the third clue is that there's a receipt among all of the things that were dumped. And the receipt is to a horse veterinarian clinic, Criterion Equine Services. And then that leads them to the zebras and a body. And so this is where the second crime is introduced. And then the fourth clue is the zebras, that the zebras pooped a small tag for a feed store and for federal feeds. And then the fifth clue was when a federal feeds employee described the thief and murderer as a 6-foot white man but he had mentioned a hailstorm the night before, and so that meant he was at a place with where there was a hailstorm, and Joan knows a place that fits the description, so this leads them to where the extinct quagga is located, one of them. And the fact that it was extinct means that the thief and murderer works at the zoo, because the amount of work that it requires to bring back an extinct animal is immense. And so from here, Sherlock basically just tricks the bad guy into revealing himself, and they go through his trash to obtain evidence to prove it, and they use the clues that he was a white guy, and so they use the clues to trick him, and then going through his evidence to his trash to prove that he did it, and then Sherlock pulls another trick to find him again after he takes off. And so there were really only the 5 clues of any value, but a very interesting series of events. So that's it for the clue cap.
Alrighty, that was fantastic. And we liked... Oh, you're welcome. we would I especially like the funny voice you did it in.
Oh, yeah. It was... whatever.
So we'd like to remind everyone, if anyone would like to email us, you can get us at bakerstreetpodcast@gmail.com, Baker Street Pod on Twitter, and of course Baker Street Podcast on Facebook. We love hearing from the fans at any time. Let us know we're not just sitting here talking to ourselves. So my final thoughts on this episode, the deductions were excellent. This was a very Holmes episode, and I love the Holmes and Bell working together. Fantastic. Good wrapping up of and addressing of the issues with Watson, and the case very good, very intelligent, very Holmes-like. Liked it immensely, and the ending fantastic. Of course I mentioned a couple minor nitpicks, but they were so minor we're barely worth mentioning. So it's good episode, very good rewatch value. Very happy with it. What did you think?
Yes, I like that it's Holmesian and quirky. It's a quirky, the whole idea of the zebras and everything, zebras. And I like the layers. We've got the really intense up front, and then we have the quirky, and then we've got all the character development, and we get to see a lot of Belle. I mean, there are a lot of layers here that I really like. So yeah, overall, very good episode, and of course the ending, awesome.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah, I'm very hopeful of the rest, but I think that wraps it up quite well. So it's time for us to depart, for the game is afoot.